You ever seen someone get personally offended by flowers? Because that's exactly what happened when Patricia Henders, the self-proclaimed queen of the HOA, came marching up my walkway, clipboard in hand, glaring at my garden like it had committed a crime. It was a sunny Saturday morning. My yard was bursting with tulips, marigolds, and sunflowers, bright, cheerful, and maybe a little over the top. But to me it was perfect. After a long week at work, those colors were my escape, my peace, my pride. Then came Patricia. She didn't knock. She didn't smile. She just stood at the end of my driveway and announced, "Your flowers are too bright. They're violating community aesthetic standards." I blinked. "Excuse me." She waved her clipboard like it was a badge. HOA Section 14. Paragraph B. Plants must blend naturally with the neighborhood's color palette. Your garden is visually aggressive. I laughed, thinking she was joking. She wasn't. She started snapping photos of my daisies like she was documenting evidence. That night, I got an email. Official HOA notice. Failure to remove or tone down the offending plant colors within 7 days will result in fines. Fines for flowers. My blood boiled. See, Patricia had been looking for a reason. She'd already complained about my mailbox being too rustic, my welcome mat too informal, and my holiday lights too exuberant. But this was personal, so I decided to play her game. Only my way. Next morning, I walked out to my garden, coffee in hand, and looked around the neighborhood. Patricia's house was across the street, neatly trimmed, beige everything, no color, no joy. It looked like a loaf of bread. That's when it hit me. If she thought my flowers were too bright, I'd show her what bright really looked like. I spent the next week quietly planning, ordered supplies online, watched a few DIY tutorials, talked to a couple of artist buddies. By Friday night, I had everything I needed. Eco-safe, glow-in-the-dark lawn paint, the kind that absorbs sunlight by day and glows like a neon sign at night. Patricia wanted dull. She was about to get the opposite. As I stirred the first can of glowing paint under the moonlight, I smiled. Tomorrow night, the neighborhood was going to light up like Vegas. And Patricia. Henders would learn the hard way not to start a color war. The plan had to be perfect. I couldn't just dump paint and hope it worked. I wanted precision, artistry, and most of all, maximum visibility from Patricia's front window. Friday night, 11:47 p.m. The neighborhood was asleep. Crickets chirped, sprinklers hissed, and the air smelled faintly of fresh-cut grass. I crept out with a headlamp, paint cans, and a few brushes. My buddy, Jake, local mural artist and prank enthusiast, was already waiting in his truck. "You sure about this?" he whispered, grinning. "Positive," I said. "If I'm getting fined for color, might as well earn it." We got to work. We painted swirls of glowing blues and greens across the grass, tracing spirals that connected flower beds. The petals of each tulip got tiny brush strokes of neon orange. The marigolds shimmered in yellow-green, and by 2 a.m., my yard looked like a galaxy had crash-landed on Earth. Then I spotted Patricia's lawn across the street. Perfectly beige, trimmed like military buzz-cut grass. No life, no joy. Jake raised an eyebrow. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" Oh, I was. We grabbed 2 more cans, biodegradable, totally harmless, and tiptoed over to her yard. I didn't want to ruin anything, just accent it a bit. So we painted gentle glowing footprints leading from her driveway to her front door, like fairy tracks. Then, in the middle of her lawn, I outlined one massive daisy, subtle but impossible to miss once it lit up. When we finished, we stood back and admired the scene. My house looked like an art exhibit. Hers, like a crime scene at a rave. By dawn, I was in bed, exhausted but thrilled. I woke up a few hours later to chaos. Patricia's voice pierced the air, sharp, furious, echoing down the street. "Who did this? My lawn is glowing." Neighbors came outside, laughing, filming, whispering. Kids pointed in awe. "Looks great, Patricia," someone shouted. She spun around, red-faced. "This is vandalism!" She stormed over to my yard. glaring at me as I stood there sipping coffee like nothing happened. "Did you do this?" she demanded. "Do what?" I asked, pretending innocence. Maybe the HOA should check if the color palette blends with the moonlight. The crowd chuckled. Patricia stomped away, fuming, muttering something about calling the police. And that's when I knew she wasn't done. The color war had only just begun. By Monday morning, my inbox was full of angry HOA emails. Patricia Henders had clearly called an emergency board meeting, complete with screenshots of my glowing yard. The subject line? Urgent. Property aesthetics violation. Immediate action required. I leaned back in my chair, smiling. This was exactly the reaction I wanted. Every email dripping with outrage made the neighborhood gossip buzz louder. But Patricia wasn't just going to let this slide. She started a formal complaint process, demanding inspections, fines, and a professional landscaper's report. I was technically in her crosshairs, but technically wasn't the same as legally. And I had a secret weapon. The HOA's own rulebook was vague about color, yet clear about eco-friendly practices. My glow paint checked all boxes. The real fun started that evening. Patricia decided to confront me in person. She marched over, clipboard in hand, this time wearing sunglasses like she was preparing for a showdown in a Western movie. "You think this is funny?" she demanded, stomping toward the glowing swirls of my tulips. "I think it's art," I replied, calmly sipping iced tea. "This is harassment!" she shrieked. "Harassment? For flowers?" By now, a small crowd of neighbors had gathered. Everyone was filming, whispering, and trying not to laugh. Patricia, realizing she was losing her audience, upped the ante. She called in a professional landscaper. The HOA hired to assess the brightness of my flowers. The guy arrived with a clipboard, measuring sunlight reflection, color saturation, and even humidity. He walked around my yard for an hour, mumbling technical jargon. Patricia hovered behind him, nodding furiously like he was going to deliver a verdict that would ban my garden. When he finally spoke, he shrugged. "Technically, everything is within city and HOA regulations. Your paint is eco-friendly, and all plants are approved species. No violations detected." The crowd erupted in applause. Patricia's face went from red to purple in about 5 seconds. You can't?" she sputtered, clearly grasping at straws. "Apparently I can," I said with a smirk. From that moment on, the neighborhood subtly shifted. Kids came over to see the glowing flowers after sunset. Adults waved when they passed my yard. Patricia became, well, quieter. But I knew she was plotting, waiting for the next opportunity to assert her aesthetic authority. And that's when I realized, if this war was going to continue, I needed a masterstroke, something unforgettable, something that would make Patricia Henders think twice before trying to dictate anyone else's color choices. By Thursday, I had my plan. The glow-in-the-dark paint had been a warning shot. Now it was time for the grand finale. Patricia Henders had made it clear she wouldn't tolerate my vivid rebellion. But the neighborhood had rallied quietly behind me. They didn't say it openly, but I could feel it. Eyes watching, smiles hiding behind curtains, kids whispering excitedly. That night, armed with more eco-friendly glow paint, stencils, and a few extra surprises, I got to work. But this time, I wasn't just targeting her lawn, I was creating a spectacle. A masterpiece that would finally show Patricia that art, joy, and a little color couldn't be tamed. I outlined giant flowers across her walkway, each petal radiating neon hues. I painted tiny glowing animals peeking from her flower beds. Frogs, butterflies, even a cheeky fox. I added glowing footprints that meandered through her yard, as if a magical creature had visited while she slept. Every stroke was meticulous, fun, whimsical, impossible to ignore. By midnight, her lawn had transformed from beige perfection into a neon fairyland. And I didn't stop there. On my own yard, I added an enormous glowing sunflower, so tall and bright it could be seen from the street like a lighthouse. Then, I set up small, solar-powered lights that highlighted both gardens, making the entire block shimmer with color. The next morning, the neighborhood woke to gasps, laughter, and dozens of phone cameras. Patricia stormed out, sunglasses on, jaw tight, but even she couldn't hide the astonishment. Her pristine lawn had been converted into a glowing wonderland overnight. "This is vandalism!" she shouted, hands flailing. "Or community art," I said, sipping my coffee, watching the street fill with smiling neighbors. Her eyes darted from glowing flowers to tiny neon foxes, then to the massive sunflower beaming over my yard. There was no arguing with the spectacle. It was impossible to take seriously. The HOA eventually backed down. Complaints were dropped. Patricia's attempts to levy fines evaporated, because legally, nothing I'd done violated any regulation. The neighborhood had seen the glow, and no one wanted to side against joy and creativity. And me? I finally got peace. Peace and a vibrant, unforgettable garden. But most importantly, I proved a point. No HOA, Karen, no matter how loud or bossy, can dictate happiness or color. From that day forward, whenever anyone drove past my yard after dark, they saw a little magic, a little rebellion, and a lot of light. And Patricia Henders? She never said a word about my flowers again. Though I caught her peeking over the fence a few times, notebook in hand, probably plotting the next HOA complaint. But that's okay. If she wants a color war, I'll always be ready. And the glow-in-the-dark paint? Let's just say I have a lifetime supply. The battle is over, but the legend of the glowing garden lives on. Can you believe how wild that HOA showdown got? If you enjoyed watching me turn the tables on Karen, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps. Don't forget to subscribe and tap the bell so you won't miss any of my crazy neighborhood adventures. And I want to hear from you. Comment below which part of the glow-in-the-dark prank was your favorite, or if you've ever dealt with a Karen like this in real life. Your stories always crack me up.